Yeah, look who he's dealing with. He created us, didn't he? But I found scientific evidence, scientific proof, mind you, that God has a sense of humor. And if you could show that picture on the screen, this is a picture from the Hubble telescope of deep space, a cluster of different clusters of galaxies. But does that not prove that God has a sense of humor? Do you guys see the smile down there? I don't hear like oohs and ahs or anything. Aren't you guys impressed by that? There's the, what?
More like a smirk.
It's more like a smirk. Yeah, maybe. Thank you. Okay, well, we all interpret it different ways. It's just like last week, those optical illusions. We all see them from different perspectives. Anyway, there's biblical evidence also for humor. Now, humor comes in a lot of different forms, just like I said. There's subtle humor, and different elements of humor pop up in the Bible. Like in the Old Testament, one of my favorites is from Proverbs. Well, you've got, on your bulletin also, you've got a quote that humor is good medicine, makes a heart glad. But in the Old Testament, we've got Proverbs 27:14. It says, "He who blesses his friend with a loud voice early in the morning, it will be reckoned a curse to him." I thought that was kind of funny. There is a place in Chronicles where Chronicles is way back in the Old Testament, and basically it's about different kings. Some of them were good, some of them were bad. And this particular one was just nasty. He was despicable. Not a good king at all. He killed his brothers so that he could become king and just did nasty things. Nobody liked him. His name was Jehoram. And it says that, and he did bad. He didn't worship the Lord, and he just did everything wrong. And it says the Lord stirred up against Jehoram the spirit of the Philistines and the Arabs who bordered the Ethiopians. They came against Judah and invaded it, carried away all the possessions found in the king's house, together with his sons and wives, so that no one was left except Jehoaz, the youngest of his sons. So the Lord smote him in his bowels with an incurable sickness. And so things just go from bad to worse for Jehoram. Nobody likes him. He dies, but nobody makes a fire for him, I guess a sacred fire when he dies. He was 32 years old when he became king. He reigned in Jerusalem 8 years and departed. And the chronicler, the one who's writing this, the historian, whoever it is, and a lot of scholars think it was a priest of some sort writing this, trying to get every detail, sticks in his own comment. And it says that he departed with no one's regret, and they buried him in the city of David, but not in the tombs of the kings. So he kind of got pushed off to the side. But he died, and nobody cared. That's what this commentator said. And it's just, that's part of biblical humor, I guess. There's also Genesis 4, where there's Cain and Abel. And Cain, remember, killed Abel, first murder and all this. And God said that he would be cursed to wander, be a wanderer. He'd never have a place to lay his head, call home. And Cain goes, "This is awful. I can't bear this," and puts out this argument. God says, "Okay, I'll let you go to the land of Nod." That's where Cain gets to go. So he goes to the land of Nod. But God has the last laugh because the word Nod means to wander. So there's like a little subtle humor in that. New Testament, Old Testament, my favorite is Balaam and the donkey. That one where the donkey talks. Balaam, the angel stands in front of Balaam, and the donkey is talking and says, "Why are you beating me? And haven't I been good to you all these years? And the humorous part of it is not so much that the donkey talks, it's that Balaam talks back to him. And it's just a comical scene. Jesus uses kind of exaggeration, even when he's kind of mad at the leaders of the Jews, when they're getting into arguments and things like that. Jesus will use exaggeration. Sometimes he'll go, "You blind guides." He says, "You're like a blind man leading a blind man, and if that happens, everybody falls into a ditch or into a pit." He talks about not judging people. Before you pick the little speck out of somebody else's eye, take the big giant log out of your own. Talks about rich people. It's tough for a rich person to get to heaven because it's like a camel going through the eye of a needle, trying to squeeze through that. Just different kinds of things like that, just exaggeration. To a Jew, that's a lot of funny. That's a lot of just a barrel of laughs for a first-century Jew. But different kinds of humor that God will show. Basically, there's two elements to that. One is the element of surprise, that Jesus would surprise people, or someplace in the Old Testament, whether it's a talking donkey or whatever it is, that there'd be the element of surprise. And what humor tends to do for us is it changes our focus. I mean, a lot of times humor can arise out of frustrating kinds of difficult things, but there'll be a surprise tucked in there someplace, and it breaks up our focus on the negative, on whatever circumstances we're going through, and it opens us up real quickly to something new and different. So it can kind of break things up, kind of refocus us in a way. And humor also kind of makes fun of our humanity. I mean, there can be mean humor, but I mean, good humor kind of brings our pride down a little bit when we think we have to control everything and be in charge and do all this stuff. Humor has a way of kind of bringing us down to ground level, and we can laugh about ourselves and have a good time. So it is kind of like medicine. There's all sorts of examples that I can think of, particularly on my bus. Sometimes, this is before your time, Edward, but this is a number of years ago on my bus when I was driving the little bus. And 3 kids, I think there's like second and third graders, were in an argument. Sometimes we argue. I mean, that's humorous too. We argue over some of the strangest things. But they were arguing over what is the largest number. What is the largest number? And one kid says, well, the largest number is like 100 million billion. And the other kid said, no, that's not that big. How about a zillion billion trillion? And they're going back and forth like this. And then one kid says, well, infinity. How about that? And the other kids go, that's not a number. And he goes, well, infinity plus 1. And I thought that was humorous and clever too. Sometimes those things. But humor will keep us going sometimes too. You either laugh or cry, and sometimes it's better just to laugh. Got a clip that I wanted to show you by it's somebody that you know from TV, and he talks about his relationship with God. He's a comedian. Listen to this interview of Tim Allen.
Alan may be in control now, but for much of his life, he wasn't. When he was just 11 years old, his world was shattered when his father was killed by a drunk driver.
I've had a curious relationship with God since my father died.
The loss set Alan on a self-destructive path, hard partying, and in 1979, a cocaine bust which landed him in prison for 2 years.
Don't ever sell drugs to policemen. They don't like it. They tend to tell judges, people come get you, and then you eat very bad food for a long time.
What do you think is the most important thing you learned?
I'm a survivor, number one. I know how to survive. My sense of humor clearly is my ally.
So in a certain sense, comedy saved you.
Always does.
We are here to discuss men's stuff.
After his release from prison, stand-up became a career. Allen centered his act around the image of the power tool-wielding man-ape. And before long, an oddly timed call made that mouth-breather a star.
You actually got a phone call one day from your parole officer and the next day from Jeffrey Katzenberg
Right.
at Disney?
Parole officer said you're released, everything was going well, and then the Katzenberg called me and said, we'd like you to be part of the Disney family.
Did the irony strike you? Did you say
And
Jeffrey
my
and
life
a
is
felon?
just filled with it's just filled with irony.
That conversation spawned Home Improvement and soon white-hot Celebrity. Allen parlayed that popularity onto the big screen, starring in a slew of family favorites like The Santa Claus and Toy Story.
Guys, let's get our parts together, get ready, and go out on a high note.
I pump for you, my little Edelweiss.
By 1997, Allen had conquered Hollywood, but still had not wrestled his own demons to the ground.
Your dad was killed by a drunk driver.
Mm-hmm.
You in your adult life were arrested for drunk driving.
I find it humiliating, and by the grace of God, I didn't hurt anybody or myself for the years that I was, drinking and driving. I could have been that guy that did that to us.
But you did say it gave you your greatest gift, which is sobriety.
Sobriety. With I never thought I thought it would be no fun, and it turned out fun has nothing to do with being drunk. At least for me, it does.
So you know yourself better.
I'm still the person of excess. Luckily, it's not food or gambling or sex, or it is cars.
Ah, the cars. Allen owns more than he'll admit on camera.
What is this orange one? Because I have to say, that's the thing I looked at.
Well, everybody goes to the bright colors. We're like children. This is like,
But in a quick tour of his garage, we saw his 66 Chevelle,
this all slides back, but it's
a
got
VW Bug,
I love this old-fashioned,
everything about it.
and this antique truck.
you don't still drive this one.
I wish I could say yes, because I'd look really cool with a straw hat. I want a little bit of, howdy. Come on, everybody.
Allen restores many of these cars himself, like this rare 1970 Ford Falcon.
So why are so many of your cars in this collection old?
Because I'm old. Is that what you're trying to say? All right, this is done. I hate this sort of stuff. It leads you into this stuff. Why are all the cars old? Why do you have wrinkles under your eyes? That's what's next.
didn't ask
Why do you need to walk slower? Because I'm old.
But don't let the antics fool you. Allen is a thinking man's clown. He'd rather discuss quantum physics than box office numbers,
Whether you're a true believer or a pagan,
and he spends a lot of time working on that curious relationship with God. Or, as he says, the builder.
Oh my God.
honey, don't see God in church. I always do that. Whoever put me here, the builder, what did you want me to do?
Do you think people would be surprised to know how deeply religious or spiritual you are?
Well, if you know me, you know it. I don't push it. I just want a relationship with whoever built me. This is too much, too weird that it happened by accident. It didn't happen by accident. I don't feel it did.
Men are pigs, right, women?
And it seems the builder has a sense of humor too.
Just too bad we own everything.
Allen, who has spent his life trying to relate to females, also gets to raise them. He has an adult daughter and now a 2.5-year-old baby named Elizabeth.
I would never in my life be involved in tea parties as much as I am right now. It's very different for me. I'm not my wheelhouse. I don't like it, but I love it with her.
He'll discuss parenting and spirituality with a straight face. But at heart, Tim Allen is a comic, and it's never too long before he returns to his natural habitat.
Yeah, that's it. Throw it at her.
As I found out myself when my cell phone rang.
Hello? Hi, sweetheart. Mommy's in the middle of an interview right now.
Oh, sure. Now it's the kid.
I'll call you right back, okay? Okay. I will. I love you. Bye.
Instead of it's a man's voice. Hey, baby, how's it going? I get it. I so get it.
It's my son.
Yeah,
my
sure it was.
8-year-old son.
Yeah, how you doing, baby? Yeah, I got it.
Sorry.
What are you doing here? I love to laugh. I love it more than anything else. I love to laugh. There's nothing better than making people laugh. Thanks, guys.
The builder. So I just thought that was kind of interesting about Tim Allen. And you wonder about other people, not only on screen and stuff, but what their spiritual take on things is. But he has a way of just bringing humor out of just about anything. So humorous times. I'd like to say that some of my plumbing jobs that I've been doing were humorous. Sometimes you have to wait for the humor, like maybe years or whatever, but things become funny in hindsight, but maybe not while it's happening. But things that have happened to you that have maybe been humorous. Anything that comes to mind? Someplace in your life where you try and try and try and try and something surprises you out of the blue. And you go, I never